Cheers.
Broken my mug.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Welcome to Musical Talk. I am Nick Hudson. I'm sat here with the beautiful and lovely Antonia. Hello, lovely Antonia. How are you?
Hello.
You're croaky.
I'm a bit croaky.
You've got nodules.
I don't have nodules.
Good. This is a tradition now that we sit down and discuss the year that was, and a couple of weeks later we discuss the year that will be.
Yes.
We look into our musical crystal balls, our glitter balls, and we discuss what we think will happen. What did we say last year that we think 2018 would be like?
We made a few predictions, I think, about audience etiquette getting worse.
The shows I've seen recently, because we'll talk about this, I've been on a kind of a recent blast of musical theatre, because summer for me, I do my other stuff, which is theme parks, and Halloween, it's a lot of theme parks. So it's around November when I start getting into the theatre again, and I've seen a lot of shows, and generally audience behaviour's been pretty good.
I think it's been a bit better. I'm trying to think about the shows I've seen recently. I went to see Everyone's Talking About Jamie over the summer, and actually thought the audience was very good in that. Because I think when the audience are really invested in a show, and it's not a tourist trap, they're there for the show, like Hamilton as well. The audience was so excited. They were just so well behaved. It's
been a good year, though. I think last year we were pretty down on 2017.
I don't know where you are.
I don't know where we are, what year we are, whether we're in the EU or not, we don't know. We've got a little list, and it's a lot of stuff has opened and gone.
Yeah.
It's been quite good, I think. Obviously, Hamilton this time last year.
The biggest event in years, basically.
But I don't think it has been.
It was in December at the time. I mean, it was on the TV. I mean, for a musical to get on the sort of evening news is a pretty big thing. I don't think anything else is really doing that. I think Strictly Ballroom was covered a little bit on, like, maybe the one show or something. Yeah. But, I mean, Hamilton was like a news item. And for it to be a news item, I think that's pretty big for musical theatre to become. Some
shows on the list we haven't seen because, we're not miracle workers. And some shows that we found out opened, I'd completely forgotten about. Shows come and go, and sadly they just, I think if you don't see them, they don't leave an imprint in your mind. And it is hard to see every show.
I think we've been spoilt for choice this year.
We have. Yeah. I mean, there's, just to go through the list very quickly, we might have left things out, so do let us know, but we have Chess, Hamilton, Bring It On, Chicago, Bat Out of Hell, Strictly Ballroom, Jamie, The King and I, Tina Turner, Fanatical, Little Shop of Horrors, Heathers, The Grinning Man, Caroline or Chain, Spamilton, Company, Seussical, Nativity, Fun Home, Fiddler on the Roof, Hadestown, and Snow White.
Not to mention the ones that were closed this year, like Strictly Ballroom.
Yes.
Young Frankenstein, Annie, all those things.
Strictly, Dick Whittington, An American in Paris. We asked some listeners what their highlights were, and Company is the big answer this year, which is interesting. Wonderful, wonderful show. I saw it. Has Patti LuPone in it, not yelling at the audience, thank God. And directed by Marianne Elliott, who did Warhorse. Very, very clever musical, and even more clever for a modern audience because it does the whole gender swap thing, which is very relevant nowadays.
Well, you recall last year that many people's highlights was Follies, and a couple of people have mentioned Hadestown this year as well. So obviously, this is the National putting themselves on the map when it comes to musicals and making themselves like the big event, musical event of the year, which is pretty impressive, and that's a relatively new development. So.
Like, the funny thing, I'm just writing down a show that has closed this year, which is Pinocchio, which was also at the National last year. It's very confusing because shows open for Christmas and they close in January. Also, like the pantomime, we have Snow White going to be opening in a few days with Danielle Hope. Charlie Stemp is back. Julian Clary is back. Paul Zerdin is back. And Dawn French is playing the evil queen, which I'm very much looking forward to that. It seems to be selling incredibly well, so I hope my day suit plan works. Would you return to that pantomime?
Yeah, it was great. I went on my birthday last year, which it's a great fun thing to do. I said to you at the time, God, it's lacking in story, isn't it?
Yes, well, that's Dick Whittington's problem, I think. Snow White would be interesting because at least there's a sort of a story there. Snow White and the Magnificent Seven, they're calling it. But let's start at the top of our list. So, chess, I saw it, you weren't too keen on it at all. And this is a problem that chess has, is that you tell someone, do you want to go and see a musical about the Cold War symbolised with a game of chess? No, I bloody well don't. That's chess's flaw. It's got wonderful songs by Tim Rice and Benny and Bjorn. It had Michael Ball and Alexandra Burke.
The Orchestra of the E&O.
The Orchestra of the E&O, the chorus of the E&O as well. 2 Lin-Manuel Miranda shows in a row that opened this year. Of course, Hamilton, don't need to mention that. We both saw it, both loved it. Still going well. They still haven't finished building Victoria around the theatre, which is incredibly annoying. The legroom is atrocious, and
there's a cast change. That's something to talk about. So they've just so it opened about this time last year.
Yep.
And they're just about changing the cast. I think the cast changed last weekend. So I think Aaron Burr left. The King, Michael Gibson left. As far as I'm aware, they're still under booking till March, but I'm interested to see when they're going to extend that. Do you think they're going to leave it quite late and then open up a massive there'll be a massive scrabble for tickets?
I don't know, because I've seen posters saying more tickets available. It's not hard to get tickets for it. You can get tickets for it. Whether that means it's not selling as well, or
they say you can get tickets, but over the summer, I looked for my birthday, which is in January, and there was no decent price. I mean, there were expensive tickets.
You could get tickets.
But you could get tickets. But what I'm trying to say is,
you can't get all tickets.
You can't get all tickets. You can't get cheap seats. No way you're going to be able to literally just get a cheap seat and just go to see it.
Like I did.
Like I did. I didn't pay for a seat. Ha!
You can still apply for the lottery on the app, which is a really useful tool. The other Lin-Manuel Miranda show that I know nothing about is Bring It On, or Bring It On, as I call it, based on the cheerleading film, and that played at the Southwark Playhouse, I believe.
I didn't even hear about this, so...
So, sorry, not much to say about that. If it comes back, we'll see it. Chicago went. Yeah. Chicago, whatever the history behind it was, it's probably a limited run anyway, but we had, they did the stunt casting, which was fun. It's Chicago, it's a museum piece. You go and you see no set and no costumes and a great band and some great songs and some wonderful dancing. You get what you want from Chicago.
But in my opinion, it was a bit of a weird revival to do, because I don't quite see why it needed to come back.
I think because they
there wasn't really an appetite for it.
No, but they could just open it. It's still playing on Broadway, Tonia. 45,000 years later, it's still... I think it's the longest running American musical there is.
I guess so, but it didn't have fantastic reviews here, did it?
Well, how can you get Chicago wrong?
Well, they didn't get fantastic reviews here, and there was stunt casting that was the problem.
A show that's just opened, or is very soon about to open at the Haymarket, which I've just added to my list, is The Band. Speaking of Gary Barlow and Tim Firth.
Is this what they casted?
On a TV show, I think. Don't know anything about it, might see it. It's done a UK tour prior to this, so I saw it was playing in Wimbledon and places like that, and Tim Firth is very good. Gary Barlow is also a good pop songwriter, so... I like the Girls.
Well, as you know, the Girls was one of my massive highlights last year, so if it's as good as the Girls, I'll be happy to hear it, but...
Bat Out of Hell. Now, there's an episode coming up with my friend Rachel and I where we discuss the slew of shows that I saw at the end of this year, one of which is Bat Out of Hell, so you'll hear more about that. It is the best, worst musical I think I've ever seen in my life. The story is like Jim Steinman, who wrote the book, took a load of drugs and decided, how am I going to string together my rather wonderful songs? And he obviously didn't take enough drugs, so he took some more and then wrote the script for Bat Out of Hell. It still delivers. It didn't get the houses it needed to at the massive Dominion Theatre. It is We'll Rock You in a parallel universe, in an even stranger universe. Did you ever see We'll Rock You, Tonia? Did you like it?
Yeah.
Did you take it for what it was?
Well, I'm a massive
Were you
Queen
rocked?
fan. I was rocked. I'm a massive Queen fan. And I thought the music was done really well.
Are you a Jim Steinman fan?
I'm not, no. I don't.
Do you know who he is?
Is it? Well, I know there's music of Meatloaf.
Yes. So he wrote all the Meatloaf songs, effectively.
I see.
So the vocal performances are wonderful. The dancing is, let's flail a lot and wave our arms around. The story is ridiculous. It makes We Will Rock You seem like Shakespeare.
One of my colleagues said she hated it because it was so ridiculous. She said
but
the
people
music
love
was
it
good.
because it's so ridiculous.
Well, she loved them. She said I really liked the music, but she was like, I hated it. I hated the story, and she loved We Will Rock You. So,
as you'll hear when I play my chat with Rachel, that was my third time seeing it, and I turned to her and just said, I cannot see this again. It's like pulling teeth. The songs are great. Yes, they go on for 12 minutes each, and they have stupid titles like Objects in the Rear View Mirror may appear closer than they seem in real life, or something like that. It's so ridiculous, you just let it wash over you for a limit, and then the dialogue appears, and you think, I wish this was all sung.
I don't even know what to say.
Okay.
It's too difficult for me to know what to say because I haven't seen it, but at the same time, I've heard enough about it to know that I'm not interested in going to see it.
Fair enough. Strictly Ballroom.
Strictly Ballroom.
While Tonia swoons on my sofa.
I'm so sad about this closing. I thought this show was fantastic.
It'll run for 3 years, you said.
No, I did say it would run for 3 years. As I thought it would be okay. This is what me and Dom said, because it was a bit of a coach party musical. We saw Dom recently before he went off to do his Christmas show, his Christmas gig. And we were saying we were really surprised because we both thought that it had everything it needed to run for a little while at least. You know, it had the Strictly audience. It was a perfect coach party musical. You know, it was appealing for everyone. You know, it had a star in Will Young. You know, could have replaced it with a similar pop star each time they, recast. The problem is, though, I think that it got really poor reviews. And I think that's why it just didn't sell. I think that's a real shame because I actually think there was an audience for this show, and I personally really enjoyed it, and a couple of my friends that I've spoken to, musical theatre fans, really enjoyed it. I think there was a problem with the critics was it a musical or was it not a musical? I think we all get a bit bogged down in musicals must be this, it must be book numbers, and it must be this and this and this and this and that. Okay, that's fine, but sometimes if we go and see a show like Strictly Ballroom that is a little bit different, I think it's dangerous to kind of go, well, it's not a musical because it doesn't have this and it doesn't have that, if it's a good piece of theatre. And I think the problem is, if we start getting bogged down and go, well, it's not a musical, so therefore it's shit, that's where the problems are going to be. And I think because that's the angle the critics took with it, I think that was its downfall. Whereas if they'd said, okay, it's a bit different to traditional musical theatre, but it's still a really good piece of theatre, then I think that it would have done a little bit better.
I know the problem Dom had with it was that it wasn't... annoyingly, it originally was a musical. And
had book numbers, yeah.
At some point they decided to not make it so. So there is a good version of it somewhere. They should have just...
It was great. It was good.
Well...
the opening numbers I thought were unnecessary. They could have got straight into the action. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was fast-paced. The dancing was out of this world. I was on cloud 9 for about a week after I saw this. I was dancing everywhere. I was so happy. It was such a feel-good piece of theatre, and I'm absolutely good it's closed because it was really, really enjoyable.
The only thing I remember about it was the end of Act 1 with the Latin dance number when they were with the fire.
Paso Doble.
That was cool.
That was very good. That was my favourite bit too.
Everybody's talking about Jamie, which I still haven't seen. It's on my list.
Oh, it's really good. You must go before my friend Luke leaves. So, as we talked about in the episode, my friend Luke is playing Jamie as the alternate or the understudy. He does a couple of shows a week, but he's leaving in January. And I know that the guy, John McCrae, who plays it, is obviously amazing, but I'm just really proud of Luke, so I just wanted to say that on the podcast.
Have a Luke.
Because obviously I've known him since he was little. But it is really good. It's an understated show, as in it's a bit like The Girls was, in the sense that it's a real story. The music is bigger, more. It's got more pizzazz to it than The Girls had, but it's a good show that would translate well to film.
And they're doing a film of it.
Yeah, because it's realistic, despite the fact that it's also not realistic with musical surreal elements, obviously, because people will stand up and start singing. The book numbers work really well in it. You know, it's really seamless. It doesn't feel like pop songs just sandwiched in, even though it's very poppy in style. So I really liked it, and I thought it had a lot of heart, and it wasn't sentimental. I also really liked a lot of the portrayals in it, especially the portrayals of characters like the Muslim characters. You know, they were portrayed as victims. They were portrayed as like strong characters. Female characters were strong, and gay characters are not stereotypes. They're real people.
It sounds like what Kinky Boots should have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this is inherently the difference between British musical theatre and American musical theatre, is that American musical theatre tends to veer towards the cliche, the stereotype, that the gays are the only victims in their world. And the British musical theatre, they look at everything in a lot more realistic and gritty way, with no sentimentality at all.
I wouldn't say that it wasn't like sentimental in any way, shape or form. It was, and I'm not sure sentimental is a good word, it was sincere. They got that balance perfectly right. I mean, Jamie is bullied for being gay in the show, but it's the way he owns it, and he's kind of like, calling me something that I am isn't an insult because I am gay and I'm proud of it. And for a character to, in 2018, to come on stage and say that, I think it's got a massive leap forward. Like, you know.
But you could argue that La Cage aux Folles did that 30 years ago.
It did, but, I mean, at the time, Jerry Herman was like, I'm not intending to make a massive statement with this. I want to make a show that entertains people. I'm not saying Jamie is making a massive statement about it. The politics behind it are much, much clearer. Like, you know.
Would the piece work well in 30 years' time? Like La Cage still works nowadays? Or is it very, these are issues now, I'm saying this now, it works because of what's happening around me? Does the social microcosm represent the social macrocosm, Antonia?
That's a hard question to answer. The theme of finding acceptance will always be relevant. So even if we've moved on in society with LGBTQ rights or whatever, in 20 years' time, then it may seem a bit historical, but the theme of acceptance is always going to be the thing. Yeah. There's always a group of people who are struggling to be accepted, and I think that will speak to those people. I think it will always speak to those people. The humanity of Jamie, despite the fact he's quite flamboyant and fun.
Yeah, but people are flamboyant
exactly.
And fun.
But it's not played up as in that's all that he is. He also has a heart as well. And I think sometimes when musical theatre portrays gay characters, that side is amped up so much that we don't always get to the human part of that character. And I feel like Jamie is a real person because he's based on a real person. Yeah. And I feel like that musical managed to bring that real person to life on stage. And I think it's a real big achievement. In fact, Hamilton I actually saw last year, but I'm sort of counting it as this year because we didn't talk about it because we did our recap before I saw it last year. But I would say that Jamie is up there, and I thought Hamilton was out of this world. So if you haven't seen it and you're thinking, don't think I'm really interested, go see it because it is a really good musical, and the music will get stuck in your head for days. From
the very modern to the clapped out, let's talk about The King and I, which came to the Palladium with, was it Kelly O'Hara?
Yeah, I would have liked to see it just for her because I really like her.
And you didn't because... Were you busy that week? Or
all the summer I was really busy. I don't know, it's The King and I, you know? We spoke about it when we talked about what was coming up this year.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about how out of date it is and how a lot of the Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals have this problem and how problematic a lot of the elements regarding culture, you know, the way that the Asian characters are portrayed in this musical is really problematic, and they would have to do a lot of changes to it to make some of it acceptable. And I highly doubt that they managed to do that. And I'm a bit uncomfortable about this musical being revived. There was a couple of reviews saying that they'd actually managed to look at it from a different angle, and a lot of the problems with it had been examined and changed. But then we had some feedback. I can't remember who it was that sent us a feedback email saying, no, it's not changed at all. So I don't know. It would have been good to see. Yeah. To see if that aspect had changed, but I think I would have been so bogged down in focusing on that I would have enjoyed the show as a show.
They're still wonderfully written musicals, though.
Yeah, it's a wonderfully written...
It's through no fault of Rodgers and Hammerstein that, you know, we have moved on. I would go to that show for the music, because their songs are perfect.
But would you find it so difficult to sit through a song like Western People Funny?
I don't know it, so I'd have to... It's not a piece I know at all, so I would go to... experience the piece and then make my mind up afterwards, but I didn't. The surprise hit of the year could be the Tina Turner musical, and I use the term loosely because we're in Strictly World here, and I doubt it's a book musical. It just blew a lot of people away, and I'm sort of tempted to go and see it, but I need to wait for cheaper tickets to come along.
Good stuff about this. Apparently it's because Tina Turner actually had a lot to do with it. the story of her rise to fame and her struggles or whatever are actually portrayed really well. Apparently good for strong female characters, and obviously you've got the really incredible strong music of Tina Turner to complement that. So apparently it is a very moving piece of theatre.
And the lead girl was meant to be astonishing in it, so well done.
I actually would quite like to go see that. Maybe we should make an effort to see that.
We should, yes. I saw a show, and you'll hear this in the episode with Rachel whenever I decide to put it up, called Fanatical, which it's a very, very small show at the Playground Theatre. It's closed now, but I just thought I'd give it a mention. We haven't mentioned every fringy piece here because we'd be here all night, but I saw it because Rachel does... It's a musical set in a sci-fi convention, and Rachel does sci-fi conventions, so it was an amusing evening. Very, very, very good songs, and I hope it has a very good future. That's, you'll hear more about it when I put the episode out. But Little Shop of Horrors at the Open Air Theatre Regent's Park. I went to see that with Andrew Keating. We did a very good episode about it, and it was very, very good. We had a very, very strong cast and a drag queen playing Audrey too.
Oh, so I wanted to see this. I can't believe I didn't get to see it.
It's on your doorstep, Tonia, practically.
Yeah, no. What was I doing over summer? Made me so busy.
Travelling around Italy and things and Spain.
I was doing quite a lot, so yeah.
It still had puppets. But there was a drag queen in it called Vicky Vox who played Audrey too. Some people hated it.
Really?
Some people loved it. We still had the puppets when it was a growing plant, but then at the line, does this look inanimate to you, punk? A puppet controlled by 3 people, out of it walked a human.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was very much like Ursula, the kind of lots of tentacles and things like that. The staging was a bit busy. Some people didn't like it. I didn't mind it because it signified movement, and you had lots of kind of boxes to look like tower blocks in trolleys being moved around. We had Mean Green Mother from Outer Space in it, which was a really nice surprise. I don't know why it's not included in all the productions, because it's a cracking good song. And it just made me more than ever appreciate how good those songs are. I loved it. It worked really well for the evening. They had park hand lights that would light up to the sky. So when they needed to have lightning effects, they would be on strobe settings, so it looked like the sky above you had lightning, and then they would be green, and everywhere around you would be green, so you're literally surrounded by green, which was really beautiful. And that was to its benefit. I think if it would move to a Pross-Arch production, it would just be another production of Little Shop of Horrors, which, whilst it's not a bad thing, around the flora and fauna, it really added to the...
I was about to say, you're in the middle of Regent's Park. You can't...
You
it's
are
the
somewhere
perfect
that's
show.
green.
Yeah, exactly.
Heathers, which I saw twice. I saw it at the Other Palace, and then I saw it recently at the Haymarket. Again, we'll have that in an upcoming episode. More talk about that. Is it a piece you know, Tonia?
I don't even know the film. No. And that's terrible to admit, because loads of people my age seem to know about it, and I'm just like, I don't know. I need to go and listen to the cast recording.
Well, they shouldn't do, because it's before your time. It's an 80s film. They know it because of the cult status that the stage show had, and now you add to that Carrie Hope Fletcher, who's a little tweeny vloggery person on YouTube, who's also a very, very good, strong musical theatre performer, and she's just about to go into War of the Worlds, which we should talk about next year. If you don't know the film, I didn't know the film when I saw it at the Other Palace. It's incredibly dark. And the music is done by Larry O'Keefe, who did Legally Blonde, which is
I'm interested.
Good. It's sort of quotes and things that people know. The audience was very excited when I went to see it at the Other Palace. We're talking wicked levels of hysteria here. Every time Carrie Hope Fletcher breathed, people seemed to cheer. Less so at the Haymarket production. People go dressed up. It's very much that kind of show, which I don't mind. The piece is brilliant. The audience were very well behaved during it, to come back what we were talking about earlier, and just really, really dark. And I don't want to reveal too much, Tonia, because I hope you do get to see it, whether it's the film or the musical. You'd be like me, though, if I were to watch the musical first and then watch the film. I think, I missed the songs. Like Legally Blonde, I only saw the film.
I can't relate, because I've seen the film so many times, and I can't believe you never saw it before you saw the musical.
The Grinning Man. Now, this is a show that I do not know anything about.
But our listeners have. We got a lot of feedback saying this was good.
Yes. Well, let's look at the feedback. I want thanks to Alex Green, who said Company was pretty special, which it was. Our good friend Ryan Souchy Boy on Twitter said Company again in America and in England, and in the US, My Fair Lady, one of your favourites.
Yes.
Bette Midler and Hello Dolly, which was the best 3 hours of his life. An old friend of Musical Talk, Eve, said Follies. Hannah Elsey, an old friend of the podcast, said Company. Again, The Grinning Man from Mike Wooster. The Grinning Man also from Richard and Michael Shapiro, whoever that is. Everybody's talking about Jamie and the entire gestalt of the Edinburgh Fringe. Ian said Company. Christine said, ready for this, saw Hamilton in February, but actually I really love the energy and vibe of Eugenius. Going to London again in 2 weeks and seeing a bunch again, including Company. So looks like, by the comments, it might be my favourite. Norman says Company in London and My Fair Lady. That's interesting. Jack says Little Shop of Horrors at Regent's Park or Hadestown at the National.
Hadestown.
You tell me about Hadestown, Tonia.
So this was a musical that basically Mike Shapiro mentioned to me. I've been reading the Stephen Fry books at the moment, the Mythos and Heroes, which just came out. And I was
we need to do the Musical Talk Mythos. The myth of Mythos.
And I've been, I was talking to both you and Mike about how I thought, certain Greek stories would make great musicals. And he was like, well, hang on a second, why don't you listen to Hadestown? And Hadestown is basically the Orpheus myth has been adapted into at least 9 operas. Wow. 2 of them are rock operas. So, it's been adapted many times. So, anyway, Mike suggested I go away and give it a listen. And I actually quite liked what I heard.
Yes, it's very jazzy.
Yeah, that's why I liked
very
it.
Very folky.
He calls it a folk opera in the advertising, but...
That wouldn't sell it.
No, I thought that was quite strange. But I don't know, to me it seems very much like a musical. When you listen to it, it's kind of got Hamilton vibes, Les Mis vibes, it's sung through. It uses modern music to get to the point. I think what is new about it is the angle that it's gone for the... There's an awful lot of parallels with modern politics going on. It was written before we Brexited, or we said we're going to Brexit, or
whatever's happening.
Whatever's happening, because in the future you might listen to this and go, hang on, we've left. Hang on, we haven't left.
What's Brexit?
It happened way before Donald Trump, but it's so eerily relevant. And it is... It's when you listen to it, it is so moving because of current politics.
But I saw Wicked recently, and it had a bigger, the whole wizard thing was very reminiscent, even though it was written as a parallel to Bush. It still works nowadays with the Trump administration. So I think in situations like that, we just look at it, might just be a coincidence. The fact
it is a coincidence, that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is...
It works.
Yeah, it adds an extra element to it. It takes it to a whole other level, and it makes it even more moving.
You should see it, because I'd like to see a show with you.
All right. Well, what we got was Hadestown. I really want to see it, and it's open till February, I think. So
it's hard to get tickets though, but there's always a way for the National to get tickets.
We'll find tickets.
Caroline or Change. Now, speaking of the National, I saw that at the National about 1,000 years ago, and it's a Janine Tesori musical. Didn't really appeal to me when I saw it first, so it's at the Playhouse Theatre, and I don't have much desire to go and see it, but apparently it's a very, very good piece with Sharon D. Clarke is in it. There's not much to say about that, I'm afraid. Spamilton is the Hamilton parody of Forbidden Broadway, which apparently didn't go down that well here because it was so New York. And it proves, I think, that Hamilton doesn't have the cultural...
I don't think it's that. I think it's more the show that came here was basically, like you say, the parody of a spoof of the New York production. And because we don't understand the jokes about the New York production, because none of us have been able to see it, that's why it wasn't funny. I think maybe if it was more about the way the musical... There was a lot of jokes about the way the music was written. And if there were a few more jokes about it transferring to London and the way that British people are responding to it, then I think that it would have been funnier. But I think the problem is that we just don't know enough about the New York production to find some of the jokes funny.
For example, they took In the Heights from In the Heights and wrote In the Hype and talked about the hype that it had on Broadway, and that doesn't... we don't care about
We're
that.
obviously aware of that, but I think like specific references to the performers from the New York production, we're not going to understand the jokes when they're actually, you know, like I've listened to the cast recording many times, so some of the jokes and some of the impressions of the performers from the cast recording were really good. But I think obviously like to understand all the little details in it, you would need to see the New York production. I also felt, listening to the cast recording, the joke got tired really easily, and that's what's really good about Forbidden Broadway, is they take a song from each musical or whatever it is, and they parody it.
And 3 minutes later, the joke's
done, and that's it. Whereas the joke, it just got old. After the first song finished, I was like, right, I'm over this now. And that's why they had to start bringing in other styles into it. There's a Sweeney Todd bit where there's one of the performers, there's like the big divas of Broadway, they keep coming on and saying how they can't get tickets for Hamilton, but it's not in the style of Hamilton, it's the style of Sweeney Todd.
So it doesn't have the same...
so it's not...
and that was at the Menier, and I can see why they brought it over, because they have a close working relationship with Forbidden Broadway, so it's a space that works well for Forbidden Broadway, and we love Forbidden Broadway.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love it, but I didn't love this because, like I said, the joke was old by the time the first number was up.
Company we've talked about, obviously a highlight for many, many listeners. I think you should certainly see it.
I would really like to see it.
You can get cheap tickets on the day, so do try and see that. The gender reversal is very, very effective, though I didn't know the piece going into it, which is criminal for the presenter of Musical Talk to say, but it hasn't been staged here for a very, very long time. To this standard of production with this wonderful cast, it was much more high tech than I thought it would have been, which I enjoyed because it had shiny things, and which is a new Netflix series, by the way. Patti LuPone was fine. I don't get the craze behind her. I never have. I think she's an incredible egomaniac, and
I don't know enough to comment. I think
Seussical. Now this played at the Arts Theatre. I think that might be wrong, but it was. I didn't see it, but I love Seussical. I like Stephen Flaherty. I love Lynn Ahrens. It's a musical I've known for a very, very long time. It's a great kids show. It's
very zany. I really do enjoy it. It's just like Dr. Zeus is really zany.
Yes.
The musical is. It is exactly like it should be.
But I think there were two versions. There's the original Broadway version, then they rewrote it and stripped it down a lot and made it flow a lot better and got rid of some of the extraneous stuff that didn't make, ironically, much sense. But so I would have been interested to see which version that was. We can't see everything,
No.
We're not made of money.
No. Nativity.
We're going to talk about Nativity twice because it's opening again. It's weird. It's kind of opened and then closed and then opened again.
Well, it's a seasonal show, so it's not really closing and opening.
Now, this is a big, big Christmas show. Now, Broadway have been doing these for years with things like A Christmas Story, even The Grinch, they've done that. And there's another musical of The Grinch coming, which is a jukebox musical, which annoys me.
We've had Elf as well from Broadway.
Yes, Elf, that was one I was thinking of. But this is the British one. This talks about Ofsted, and it has...
Based on the film Nativity, if you've not seen it.
Of which there are like 12 now.
I think there's 4 or 5, but
yeah, too many, and it's become a bit of a British franchise. And the musical, I saw it at the not at all intimate Hammersmith Apollo, or Labbert's Carling HMV Apollo, whatever the hell they're calling it this week. And it was incredibly entertaining. And I remember when the cast recording came out a couple of months later, even though it was veering into summer from spring, I still listened to it and enjoyed it very much. The songs are short, they're very, very catchy, they're very enjoyable, they're very clever. It sort of rhymes. I forgave it.
I was happy because a lot of the songs from the film were actually in it, or had been,
Sparkle
and Shine.
And
yeah,
shine.
Exactly. It makes me laugh every time I watch it because it is so true to life.
It makes you wonder why they don't write the version of the Nativity they wanted in that stage show and sell it to schools.
I don't know why they've not done that. I would do it at my school.
Yeah?
I would do that at my school. They love jazzy nativities, so...
I enjoyed it. One of my favourite gags in it was we have the Coca-Cola advert, which is holidays are coming, and in this they talk about Hollywood is coming, which worked quite well. And in this production opening soon, again at the Hammersmith Apollo, and it's only at the Hammersmith Apollo. Last time it was a UK tour. They put Danny Dyer in it, and Danny Dyer. Do you know who they are, Tonia?
Father and Daughter.
They are, yes. So Danny Dyer's like that. He's like talks like that, and so do his daughter. So Danny Dyer plays the Hollywood agent, and when I saw it, it was the Irishman from Louis
Walsh.
Louis Walsh. He speaks 3.5 lines, and everyone claps, and he disappears, and it was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoyed it. Simon Lipkin is, of course, the wonderful performer he is. Plays the teacher, Mr. something or other, can't remember his name.
Don't you think it's a pity that these musicals, these sort of like festive musicals, which are like the staple of like Broadway, like, you know, Elf and all that kind of coming over here in the seasonal show, do you worry that it's replacing our tradition, which is pantomime? I'm sure Thos would have something to say on this, but do you worry about that?
No, because traditionally pantomime isn't a Christmas thing. But
it is now.
It is now.
And it is a tradition.
Thos would say the proper time to see a pantomime
January,
is
I
after
agree,
Christmas.
totally agree. But what I'm trying to say is...
No, because you have the pantomime...
But these shows, they still run into January. The panto starts now. It's like... I don't know, that's our thing. The Broadway thing is the festive show. We've got a lot more festive shows. Do you worry that people are not going to go see the panto? They might go see the big Mahusive panto, the Palladium, but I wonder about these small pantos.
No, because pantos are performed all over the country, and Nativity is performed at one 5,000-seat theatre in Hammersmith. So I think if...
But this is like what we're saying. But do you think it's a trend that's going to continue and it's going to be like the big Christmas show? Like, can you imagine like Elf coming back and having to compete with the pantomime, like these big shows?
No, because Elf was terrible.
Yeah, but I'm like,
it was actually...
I mean a show like Elf. I'm not saying Elf exactly, but what I'm trying to say is, do you worry that the festive show is going to replace the pantomime because they're going to come more and more and more? No. They're going to become a bigger thing.
I'd have to see it happen before I get worried, and it hasn't happened
yet. Put yourself in the like position of a family, and you've got four people, mother, dad, and 2 children, and you had to choose over panto or the festive show. Like, it might be like one family might only be able to afford to see one, and they might go for the festive show, and then the panto dies out.
What's good
Do you
about
think that would be a terrible thing?
What's good about Nativity was it had elements of panto
in it,
and the American shows, we've only had one come here, and it wasn't a particular success, so I don't see them repeating that. I mean, they have White Christmas, which is, you know, a big American show, but that's more...
It's touring, isn't it?
Yeah. You got to think how many pantomimes are playing in England, how many fucking Greatest Showman songs are we going to get on stage this year? I think pantomime will always win, but it's nice that we have a British
festive show,
American style show that's British, because it is like a pantomime, though I'd rather see a pantomime at the Palladium again, and I'm glad that is now.
Pantomime's on the up because of that, and that's what the Palladium do traditionally, and they should be doing more of what they do traditionally.
Well, let's talk about Snow White, even though I think we have already, but it's not open yet at the time of recording. It'll be open by the time this episode airs. I can't wait because I loved it last year. Hopefully it'll have more of a story than Dick Whittington did.
But we've got a lot of the same, you know, big stars, like comedians and stuff. Are you worried the gags are going to be the same? So
yes,
repackaged.
But they're good gags. So it's been a year since I've seen it.
And obviously Panto has the gags, like he's behind you.
But
like
this
the
one,
stuff that you
but this
expect.
one didn't, which I thought was so interesting about it. It just veered into chaos. And... there was no, he's behind you. There was no, oh yes it is, oh no it isn't. There was no slop scene. There was no ghost gag. There was none of the traditional pantomime bits. It was just an excuse to have a couple of stand-up routines blended in with the story. Now, earlier we talked about the cast, Dawn French. You got Charlie Stemp and Daniel Hope from Over the Rainbow doing the musical theatre stuff. Hopefully they will realise that there is... the people that have seen this show year after year, and they will change the gags because it's a team piece. It's all written by all the talent involved, so it's like a devised piece to go back to your A-level days. And I'm very much looking forward to it. Plus, it's the Palladium, so you know they're going to do something special with it. Obviously, the difficult thing is the dwarf bit, as we talked about earlier, and they are going for calling them the Magnificent Seven, which is quite amusing. To go from the fun to the completely opposite, Fun Home. Do you know this piece?
I know a little bit about it.
You know more than I do. Talk.
I know it's sort of coming out story, is that right? I know one song from it called Changing My Major to Joan. I think it's called Joan, I don't know the song, where a character discovers her sexuality after sleeping with a woman for the first time, discovers she's a lesbian. But that's literally the only thing I know about it. And I think the protagonist is the first sort of realistic lesbian protagonist in any musical, which is, again, a big leap forward. I've had some shows which are a big leap forward.
It sounds like it's very now.
Yeah. And
again, it's by Janine Tesori. Who's like the serious musical writer, I think, and it's extremely talented.
I liked what I heard from it, but I don't know, I have to actually sit down and actually probably listen to it.
Do you like shows where you are completely taken away from the problems in the world, or do you like shows where you are presented with the problems in the world and make you think about life?
Do
you go to the theatre to escape, or do you go to the theatre to be...
Depends what mood I'm in.
Okay.
I like both types of theatre. I think there's nothing wrong with escapism at all. And there's been a lot of that because of all the shit that's going on at the moment. But at the same time, like I say, Hades Town really moved me because it felt so relevant. And Jamie moved me as well because, again, acceptance is a massive theme. I think that we're always going to find something in that musical to relate to. And I think that, again, really made me think and... reflected life and all that kind of stuff. And I think people often say that theatre is a mirror to life. We should always try to remember that. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with escapism. Like, I enjoyed 42nd Street because it was just tap dancing for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever.
5 hours. Fiddler on the Roof is our final piece to discuss.
This was the Chichester?
Yes. Again, it's a piece I haven't seen, but I've seen bits of the film, and it looks incredibly moving. And it's, Bock and Harnick who know what they're doing.
Although I would just like to say that for the first time ever, it wasn't on Broadway, it was off Broadway. There was actually a Yiddish production of this.
Oh, good.
I think they put a lot of work into not necessarily a direct translation, exactly what was being said into Yiddish, but like as close as they could, to keep the essence of the actual text, but to translate it into something that would make sense. And apparently it was a very moving production because it's almost exactly how it should be.
Yeah,
it should have been. It was in the language of the people that they're the characters in the story.
They did that with West Side Story, where they put a lot of the Jets.
No, the Puerto Ricans.
The Puerto Rican sharks into
Spanish,
and it didn't work. Anyone who has.
But you think it's because it was only little excerpts of it? It wasn't completely done in Spanish because obviously this is a clash between cultures. It was possibly the way that it was done, whereas this was done with great detail of care and attention, not just in the translation but in the rehearsals. So the performers, most of which I think could probably understand some Yiddish in some shape or form, but they were given the original libretto with the Yiddish translation and a literal translation. So they were given 3 translations so that they could understand what exactly they were saying and how it corresponded to the original piece, so they could get the actual meaning across from the text.
I always think that's risky because when you're dealing with musicals, you're dealing with a set rhythm of speech, effectively. So the composer and lyricist dictate at what rhythm the jokes land, the syllables scan, and when you put a different language into that, it kind of goes against everything that the songwriters worked with.
That's what I'm trying to say. They were so meticulous in making sure that it still landed despite the fact that it was in a completely different language. And they made sure the people that were performing it really understood what they were saying so that the meaning still came across.
And speaking of shows with integrity and detail and intelligence, we should talk about The Greatest Showman, which you haven't yet seen, have you, Tonia?
No.
I mean, it's sitting on our television here waiting for me to tie you up and for you to watch.
I saw it, but I had listened to the soundtrack.
You've taught songs from it, haven't you?
I've taught songs from it because the kids will all they'll literally. We were walking back from the church today after doing a church performance, and they were singing them. They're still singing them non-stop. I mean, I listen to the cast record and I just can't get on with it. I just can't. I just think they're bland pop songs. They all have the same chord structure. They're just dull, boring songs. They all have 5 chords, but people love them.
5? You've been generous. It was 3 when I heard it.
4 or 5 chords. people love them. And I think it's because they're simple and they're songs that people can latch onto. They've got pop song hooks. The children find them easy to sing. Well, actually, they're not easy to sing. They're often I had to mess around with I forgot what song it is now. I've blocked it out of my brain to get it into
This Is Me?
a range. No, it wasn't This Is Me. To get into a range that the children could manage. Some of it we had to sing down the octave or up the octave. I can't remember what the details were. These songs, they've done so well in the charts. It's because they're pop songs. They're not musical theatre songs. They are pop songs.
I mean, we mentioned Christmas Story earlier, which is by Pasek and Paul, and it makes me sad that they can do
book numbers, yeah.
Very, very good retro musical theatre stuff. And I've said it all along, I think they've just sold out to Hollywood, and fair play to them. They've done it very well.
They've definitely done it very well.
They've fulfilled the brief of writing bland pop.
It's just the imagery is so cliched. I don't want to hear another song about star-crossed lovers walking on a tightrope. Like, I'm not interested. It's so bland and so boring.
Now, a film with hooks and pop songs and easy-to-sing songs, I use the term loosely, is Mamma Mia 2.
Which I actually loved.
So...
But ABBA's, they're good pop songs. They're complex sometimes. Yeah. They're not basic pop songs. Sometimes they're complex, and that is the difference. And it's the same with the Queen musical. It's the same with We Will Rock You, why I really liked this. Sometimes these jukebox musicals, they are ridiculous. I mean, Mamma Mia 2 was ridiculous. Sometimes the songs were really shoehorned in, and they repeat some of the same songs for the first film. But the songs are interesting. They're more complex. The way that they're written, the way that they're composed are like proper songs. They're not just boring pop songs that are completely uninteresting. Like Waterloo, the analogy in Waterloo is so much more interesting about a battle between two lovers and how one is going to give in to the other one and how they liken it to the Battle of Waterloo, and then compared to a really boring analogy about star-crossed lovers. Yeah,
and then to add to the equation, they're not even English.
Yeah. They're not writing in their first language.
So why wouldn't you see Chess?
Well, I do like some of the songs from Chess, but I think again it's just the concept of the musical that puts me off. It's not necessarily the music that puts me off; it's the concept of it. I can put aside the fact that a film is completely ridiculous, like Mamma Mia, which is totally feel good. It was so fun and feel good because the music is good. But I can't
Little Shop of Horrors is ridiculous.
But I can't do that with Greatest Showman. I will see it, but I just...
You will?
But I don't know. The music is just... It doesn't... It
hasn't sold you and you don't...
No. Unlike ABBA, who I've always loved. I've grown up listening to ABBA, so, I mean, it's going to win every time.
A film Tonia has no interest in is... Mary Poppins Returning.
Mary Poppins!
The longest gap from an original film to its sequel. And it is a sequel, it's not a remake. Don't worry, it's not a remake. Though we do have a lot of remakes coming next year, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Which seems to be annoying people a little bit.
Yes. The Lion King live-action animated remake.
It is pretty much just animation. Because CGI.
Just better animation.
It's just CGI.
We haven't seen Mary Poppins yet, so we have nothing to say about it. We are staying away from the songs. I think Tonia and I are going to see it hand in hand.
I'm
we are
so excited. I'm like ready to burst.
Are you ready to be disappointed, perhaps?
I don't think I'm going to be
just
disappointed.
To be negative immediately because musical talk.
I'm trying to go into it, again, with an open mind of this is not a remake. It's a new film. It looks like it's got plenty of nods to the originals. But I'm trying to treat it as a completely new thing, a completely new story.
But to me, it looks like they're just relying solely on the original. There's an 8-minute number where they dance with chimney sweeps, like
and
in the original. And there's an animated
characters.
and live-action sequence, which, like in the original, and I bet it's going to be about a dysfunctional family that Mary Poppins saves. I just think
that is the point of it. That is the point of Mary Poppins.
But why do it?
I don't know. I guess, like, there is that point. There's so much good about the original musical, the original story. Why does there need to be another one? But I guess in the way you have to think, like, there are going to be children that don't know the original film that are going to go to see this, and they're going to be introduced to Mary Poppins, and they're going to fall in love with Mary Poppins for the first time, and I think that's magical.
And let's not forget, we've had a remake for a very long time with very good songs.
Are you talking about the stage production?
I am.
It was obviously Cameron McIntosh, when he got the rights, had to make some sort of deal with PL Travers. The stage show was more true to the original books, expanded on the characters, and got more to the root of the characters. I think the problem that P.L. Travers had with the film was the fact that Disney didn't...
It was terrible.
Well, no, it's not a terrible film. It's of its time.
For her, it was terrible.
But it was terrible for her because she felt that Disney didn't understand the characters. She felt like they didn't understand the point of it. And the thing is, P.L. Travers' life was really tragic. Her dad was dependent on alcohol. He really struggled. He died when she was little, and she never got over that. And Mr. Banks was a redemption character. Like, he was a father figure who also worked in a bank, just like her dad did, and he was having some struggles. But in the end, Mary Poppins came along, this magical person came along, and basically at the end, Mr. Banks finds redemption, and they get much, much, much more to the root of that in the musical than they do in the film. I do wonder, I don't think P.L. Travers would have liked the music, because she hated the songs, the original songs. Obviously, they kept.
She wanted folk songs in it originally, didn't she?
They kept a lot of the original songs in the stage production, but I do wonder whether what P.L. Travers would have thought of the stage musical.
She'd have liked Temper.
Yeah, she probably would have
More
liked
of that.
Temper. More of that. Less of the let's go fly kite. What? But I don't know. It would have been interesting to know what she actually thought of that, because
Let's go and fly kite, as it should be.
Let's go and fly kite. Yes.
We rarely touch on Broadway because you can find that on other podcasts. But Tonia's written Pretty Woman, which stars our own Samantha Barks.
Because it's a British performer. Yeah.
Also, Frozen needs no introduction. I'm sure it'll come here. But I listened to the cast recording. I just couldn't get into it. I'm not a Frozen fan anyway. A lot of people think this is a problem with Disney stuff, which is why Mary Poppins was so brilliant, is you have a perfectly good 90-minute musical.
Yeah.
And then you stretch it to fill 2.5 hours in the theatre with 8 more songs that you don't need because you're shoehorning songs that aren't necessary. I think Aladdin is very guilty of this.
And you don't need to. Remember, the audience that it's aimed at is children. I know, like, parents will go because we grew up with the songs in the 90s or whatever, and we have to take the kids. You need to remember these are for children. There's nothing wrong with the film. Maybe lengthening it a little bit, but I think when you're making it so long, I mean, actually, the original production of Mary Poppins was too long, and they changed that for the Broadway production. I know they cut quite a lot of stuff. The children that sat in front of me were so bored by the end of Act 1 because it was too long. It was far too long. They stretched it out way too much. So yeah, I think they have to be really, really careful. And they've added ballads and all sorts of stuff to Frozen, and no one gives a crap. So it's like, it didn't need to be there. And they've taken out songs from the film to do that, so it's like, whatever.
Tony's written here, Be More Chill, which I don't know if is a musical or just a message for me.
No, it's a musical. Again, another musical that Michael Shapiro got me into.
Is it linked to Frozen?
No, it is. It hasn't gone to Broadway yet, I don't think. It's an off-Broadway musical. It's based on a book called Be More Chill. It's another take on Faust. It's basically about a boy who swallows a pill with a computer inside it, and the computer is like the devil character, and he tells him what to do. We'll
mention Randy Rainbow. It's been a very good year for him. If you don't know who he is, check him out on YouTube. You'll be entertained for hours.
He's basically the best thing to come out of the Trump administration.
Yes.
If you like parody, like Forbidden Broadway, whatever, then you'll like his political takes on musical theatre songs. They're very funny. Go check them out.
And there's one prediction I made in the last year's episode that sort of came true, wasn't there?
Sort of, yeah.
I said Les Mis will close, and it did. Well, what's the story behind this?
Well, the Queen's Theatre desperately needs some work doing to it, so I think Les Mis will be closing temporarily and going somewhere else. Where it's going to go, I haven't heard much more about this. It was in the newspapers over the summer. Whether that's going to be anytime soon, whether it's going to be next year, whether it's going to be in 2020, no idea. But where do you think it's going to go? Neither.
An immersive production around the streets of London? I don't know.
I have no idea. But it's good to know that they're actually doing something with the Queen's Theatre, and it's going to.
I've never been, and I think as we'll talk about in a future episode, I saw, and you and I talked about, Tonia, I saw Phantom recently, and I think Les Mis needs to be the next museum piece that I go to, because well, you said to me last week that Phantom was your highlight of the year, which was so surprising for me. Yeah, because it was just for its theatricality, and I still think it stands. I stand by the fact, as you and I talked about, that it is one of the most, not beautiful but shiny theatrical shows I think you can still see in London. And Tonia and I talked about that. We don't need to have the same conversation again. But what was your theatrical highlight of the year?
Well, I'm not going to count Hamilton because it was last year,
Yeah.
technically, even though we did talk about it last year on this episode.
And every week that you came in, yes.
I'm going to say...
Jamie?
I really... No, I have to say Strictly Ballroom because when I came out of that show, I was dancing on air for a week. Like, I couldn't stop dancing or being happy. It made me want to ballroom dance again. I'll get back into it. I was just literally on cloud nine. So I'm going to say Strictly Ballroom, but I really did enjoy Jamie's. It's really hard to choose.
And you can listen to Tonia and Dom's episode about Strictly Ballroom.
And
here.
mine and Mike's episode on Jamie.
And Hamilton and lots of other stuff.
Many
So
other stuff.
we'll be back in a few weeks to discuss 2019 and all the joys that holds. Tonia, have a lovely Christmas.
I will do my best.
Thank you so much for a lovely year of musical talk.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad. I haven't been around very much this year.
No,
but,
thank you very much for that.
I'll do my best.
And we'll speak to you soon.
Merry
Thank you very
Christmas.
much.
Bye.
For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Musical Outtalks.
I wouldn't say it's not sentimental and sentimental
even say the
animation
word.
form. Sorry. But it's been adopted into at least 9 musicals.
Adopted.
Adopted.
And adapted as well.
Okay, hang on.
Special with it. Mm-hmm. You know.
Can we just pause? Because I really need to go to
Go
the
to the loo. Oh, I didn't record. Shit.
Oh my god, can you imagine?